This next rapid fire section is our effort to make sure that you hear at least a little about a lot of things. And you'll have seen somebody, you'll heard a bit of what their work is, and you can follow up afterwards and speak with people. So we've got 8 speakers, and we've got 40 minutes until lunchtime. And by my arithmetic, that's plenty of time. But although today is about compassion, I think this next bit might require just potentially a little bit of fairly brutal chairmanship. So at 4 minutes, our speakers will hear this. And should any of them still be speaking after 5 minutes? So, and to be honest, if I don't get to blow this, I'll be gutted. So they've only got 5 minutes. They're going to come up and introduce themselves. 5 minutes, they'll then just make way for the next person to come up and take the mic. So it's a tough challenge for them, so I'm sure you'll be very sympathetic. Susan High is our first speaker.
Thank you very much. So, the Living Right Up to the End project that I've been involved in has taken us on a really interesting journey, and in 5 minutes today, I'll share with you 4 of the main challenges and some of the learning that we have gained from that experience. We wanted to engage with people living with long-term conditions and their carers to co-produce something which would enable them to think ahead and to make plans for the latter stages of their lives. The first challenge was the elephant. First challenge was that people don't like talking about death and dying, particularly not when it's their own. So how do we get ordinary people in communities to talk about really difficult subjects? We learned several things which helped us with this. We found that the key was to get on the ground and get known and recognised in the community. Relationships were really important. We found that people liked and responded to familiar things. When we arranged meetings, we arranged them in local venues, well known, and we got local people to help with transport and to help make tea and to bring cakes. Really importantly, we learned that this process is one that can't be rushed. It took longer than we anticipated. We had to learn patience. The second challenge that we encountered was gatekeeping. Some of the groups, including those with particular relevance to people with long-term conditions, would not engage with us. The key individuals in these groups made the decision on behalf of their members that the subject matter was too upsetting. We made several attempts, but in the end we engaged with the groups who were willing to engage with us. The third challenge was, how do we get the information that we want? We devised 2 questions which we asked the groups and individuals to consider. Question 1, if you were living with a long-term condition and your health was deteriorating, what would be important to you? And question 2, what are the barriers to you and your loved ones thinking about and making plans for the future? We took all of the responses and we used framework analysis to identify themes. We then took these themes back to the groups to check that we'd accurately understood what they had told us. So what did the people tell us? They told us that it was important for them to focus on living. There were lots of responses saying we just want to get on with it. People wanted to be able to access information that was appropriate for their needs at the right time for them. People felt that having a plan for the future was important. They wanted to have discussions with their families about important and sensitive issues. The barriers to thinking about and making plans for the future included not knowing what to do, having no one to talk things over with, anxiety about how much this would cost, and not knowing how to start these conversations with loved ones. For some people, though, making plans for the future was just not a priority. Challenge number 4, having got this information, was what do we do with this information that we've collected? So we asked the people who had shared their views with us how they wanted to take it forward. The groups felt an information pop-up stand provided by local people in local areas where the public could browse and choose resources would be helpful. Together we sourced a variety of information which was reviewed by the groups. A range of leaflets and resources providing information on planning for the future and having difficult conversations was agreed. The groups designed their own tool for keeping all of their important practical information and their plans together in one place, and this is the All About Me book that they designed. The information stands are now provided regularly in local health and community centres and at community events. At each session, there are volunteers who are local and who have experience of living with or caring for someone with a long-term condition and of making plans for the future. They're familiar faces. They're able to signpost people to suitable information, but they're also able to have a chat. At one venue in Clackmannanshire, the volunteers noticed the same lady on several occasions. The first time she walked past, the next time she smiled and said hello. On the third occasion, she stopped for a general chat. And last week, she spent time looking at the resources and took some information away. She told the volunteer that she'd been thinking for some time about making plans for the future, but hadn't known where to start. We listen to the volunteers' experiences and we review the venues and the times and the resources according to the feedback. Evaluation is an early stage, but initial impressions are that this resource is proving useful. Thank you.
Imagine a table around which your friends and family are sitting and they're talking animatedly. You walk in and you sense a possibility, a feeling of interest and engagement and enthusiasm in the air. They're talking about dying and death and grief and how they want their end of life to be. There's nobody grimacing, there's no awkward silences, and no one is embarrassed. This is what it's like when end-of-life plans have become as commonplace as birth plans. I'm Jane Duncan-Rogers of Before I Go Solutions. We are a community interest company that helps people and organisations and groups to make good end-of-life plans and to feel the relief that that brings right now and the benefits to the people after you have gone. But what is an end-of-life plan? Much more than you think, probably. There are 6 components. One is the legals. Yes, the will that everybody knows about, but also the power of attorney. Maybe here you know about it, but many people out there don't know about how important a power of attorney actually is. Second, your last days. What do you want in your last days? What do people want? Do they know about advance directives, anticipatory care plans? Getting those in place. The third component is your household. Who knows how your household runs? Who knows about the things that only you know about? Which appliances do you know that wouldn't be working if you weren't there anymore? Not to mention your financial affairs and the amount of clutter that you might have wanting to get sorted out. The funeral is something else that we are very familiar with. But a funeral, many people don't know that you don't have to have a funeral, that you can have it the way you want, that you don't have to employ a funeral director. These are all options, and choosing this can bring the costs right down if that's important for you. Your digital life. Just because you die does not mean to say that your digital life will end. In fact, it won't end unless you know what to do about it. And you do it right now, before it's too late. Finally, your living legacy. This is how you want to be remembered. If that's important for you, for your grandchildren and others to know about what was special in your life and the wisdom that you can pass down, you need to think about it now and put it in place. So 83% of us think that this is a really good idea to get all this in place, but only 23% have done it. The main reason that is given is that they have no time. I'm sure we'll all recognise that. But if you dig a little bit deeper, we discover that people are a little bit afraid. And that ties in with my own story. My husband died 6 years ago. We had a year before he actually died of knowing that he probably was going to die. A few months beforehand, we answered some questions that a friend had sent me in an email, and they were difficult questions. Things like, what kind of coffin do you want? How do you want your body to be dressed? Are there any small, precious things to you that wouldn't go in the will, but you'd like somebody else to have? Not easy questions to answer at the best of times, let alone when you know you're going to be dying. But here's the thing. We had the most amazing time doing it. It was quite incredible. We felt so close and so warm and so loving. And that was a real bonus. In the end, we referred to it as our last project together. And that is what happens in the groups that Before I Go Solutions runs. When people get together, they get a chance to experience how wonderful that is. Audrey, for example, a carer from Quarriers in Elgin, told me, that's not her real name, told me that she didn't know that talking about death could be such a laugh. Hard to believe, but true. So, I've got a question for you. Hands up. Who has a comprehensive end-of-life plan in place right now? Okay, only a few people, and I'm not surprised, because we don't think about it like this. So I've got an action for you to do. Here is a card. It has got the name of the website on it, and there's a quiz where you can find out how well prepared you are right now. They're over there on the table. Please take one away, do the quiz, find out how well prepared you are, and then start to put your plans in place. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Eleanor Jane and I work for the charity Sue Ryder. And I think I'll speak really, really fast to avoid the bell and whistle treatment. So today is a perfect opportunity to talk about Sue Ryder's very own compassionate community. Almost 3 years ago, we launched our online community and support website, which is aimed at supporting people when a loved one is dying or has died. So we know from our experience of providing both hospice care and neurological care just how important it is for people to feel able to talk about their emotions as a loved one approaches the end of life and when they are grieving. Yet, we only provide services in specific geographical locations. So reflecting, I think, what the first speaker, Alan Kelleher, was saying about taking support to people where people actually are, well, we decided that a place where a lot of people tend to be is online. So we set up our online community. It's our first truly national service and aims to bring information and support to people beyond our traditional hospice locations. The site, I don't know if anyone's been on it, but the site consists of a peer support forum and an advice section featuring information articles that give expert answers to frequently asked questions. The forum part of the site has been by far the most used part of the service, and as a result it's evolved over those 3 years. The vast majority of users are seeking support with bereavement, and this is the type of support that we now provide. It reflects the need to provide peer-to-peer engagement rather than us providing support, as Libby also reflected in her presentation earlier. So our hunch that an online or compassionate community would be useful has been borne out by experience. In the last year, the site has continued to grow, with engagement, registrations and traffic to the website all rising. More than 8,500 people per month have visited the site for support, making more than 700 posts per month. 84% of users say the site has helped them feel less alone, with 1/5 having no other sources of support, showing just how important this community is in supporting people who would otherwise struggle to get the support they need to cope with their grief. One quote from the last few months has been, "Members of this online community understand what I'm going through, and that's why I feel I can be honest and receive true support." So our latest survey of community members shows just how important the support is in giving people tools to help them deal with their grief. 84% said it gave them an outlet for their emotions. 88% said it helped them feel less alone. 82% said it helped them feel more able to cope. 78% count on other community members for support, and 61% said the online community is an important part of their lives. 20% do not have any other sources of support, including from family and friends. Another quote sums up the type of support we provide. "I was crying until I found this website. I had started believing that I'm the only one who is not coping." Interestingly, a lot of people who use the online community are not even active participants, but simply read conversations and find that is the support that they need. And when looking at the people using the community, it seems that the older you are, the more likely you are to use the online community. So the top 5 advice pages in terms of people using these pages had the following themes. How can I cope with bereavement? How long does grief last? What can I expect when death is near? What is an advanced care plan, and do I need one? And how can I tell a child someone they love is dying? So to try and spread the... Oh, that's disappointing. So to try and spread the community as far and wide as we can, we've carried out a lot of work to try and promote it. We've recruited online community case studies to talk about the impact it has had on their life and their bereavement. We have promoted the service through a GP practice campaign across the whole of the UK. We've carried out a number of PR campaigns, and now we've launched a super user program. So online community mentors are now supervising the whole community and acting and developing further mentors to really encourage peer-to-peer support. And so that's, for the future, that's where we see our growth being in terms of growing online community mentors and making it a genuine, compassionate and supportive place as it evolves to support people's needs. One final quote is, "I feel as though I've made many friends, even though we will never meet." And I realised just as I came up here that I've left a box of leaflets about the community under a chair at the back. So, sorry, I hope that's not made anyone a bit anxious about what that is, but I will distribute those to anyone who's interested.
I'm Barbara Chalmers, and I'll just put down my props here. I'm sorry we weren't allowed PowerPoint today because I do like a little visual prompt, but I've brought some things to show you anyway. I'm a communications consultant and service designer to trade, and in that capacity I've worked in the past with Good Life, Good Death, Good Grief and Stuart at Cruise and Scottish Government and NHS and councils, and I'm currently working with Macmillan. I saw Tricia Hutt somewhere earlier on. Hello. We're working with Snook, the Glasgow-based service design agency, and with Macmillan and the Health and Social Care Partnership here to try and assess unmet user need at the end of life in Glasgow City. So if anyone's interested in having a chat about that, give myself or Tricia a little shout. Obviously, I'm not going to reveal anything about it because it's live work at the moment. 7 years ago, I undertook a pretty major service design project for myself, which was a passion project, and I service designed and innovated a new service, which was an end-of-life website. It had occurred to me that we're absolutely crap at end-of-life planning and no one was really filling that space. And at the same time, actually, Good Life, Good Death were birthing. So a lot has changed in the landscape since then. But when I launched my website, it offers a big fat blog of all sorts of information. It has life planning tools so that you can manage your wishes, your funeral plan stuff, your safe deposit box. We tell you which documents to store there. So there's more than one way to do this. Obviously, a few people are doing things now. And there's a memory box. So you can sort out your digital legacies from your digital litter, which is more and more an issue. And I tried to design compassion into that website by talking to people. So I did all of the process by talking with people and understand what their needs are. And since I've been doing the website, I've done a whole lot of other things. I was privileged to share a platform with Alan Kelly here before at a Death Doula conference. I was the first person to launch death cafes in Scotland. I've run them roughly quarterly since and do some death meetups too. I develop little tools and things like this. So I give these things away freely on the website. The website is free to use. It's had hundreds of thousands of visitors. There's probably 10,000 hits a month and a couple of thousand people managing their end-of-life plans. And all of the resources are free. I do events like absent friends suppers, to support what Good Life, Good Death are doing. I do bits of research to see what's happening, and so exactly as Jane just said, the reason why people who love the website, who absolutely get that they should make plans, who don't want to be a burden, the reason they don't do it is they're just all too busy to die. And so I did a little skinny booklet with 7 simple steps on how you can do that, and I launched it at Children's Literature Festival a year ago. And I've also in the last year done a Masters in Design Innovation at Glasgow School of Art. And just to show you the sort of breadth of service design, this is one project I was working on with Pluscarden Abbey, looking at spirituality and belief, and we were looking at the space of the vigil when people are actually dying, what happens there, how we might reimagine that. And the other bit, which was my sort of final project, was looking at funerals as a trigger for end-of-life planning. And this is like quite a tangible, major life event that often triggers people when somebody else dies or they attend a funeral, thinking about, oh my God, it could be me, what if? I can talk through this. Tim and his colleagues at Scottish Government afforded me 2 hours to talk them through this at one point, because it comes out in 4 services, actually, 2 private sector, 2 public sector, that would, 1, eradicate funeral poverty, and no small ambition, and 2, engage people with end-of-life planning at the start of adulthood, not leave it to the end of life, which I think is absolutely vital. So I'd be happy to share that as a resource with anyone. It's mostly pictures, actually, so don't worry about it looking quite fat. And service design is a process, say like for a death cafe, it's just about small acts of human kindness, which I think someone else mentioned, to hold a space, to offer people the opportunity to talk, to provide some home baking, to listen. That's really what we're talking about here. And service design is just a process that we go through, a sort of 7-step thing to go from research and user engagement through to designing concepts, testing those, and on through to a service design. I think what I would like to say to people is the most important thing is do not get stuck in analysis paralysis, which I think happens. There's masses of literature and consultation out there. Just do something and get it wrong, and then we can work to get it better, because that will show us what the barriers and enablers to participation are, what the key milestones and touch points are. Oh, I'm going to keep talking. And once we understand these things, we can design heart into the services that we have. Thank you very much.
For me, I just want to say this is a great day. If anybody doesn't know this, I just want to say, if you don't know Rebecca, watch her, get her phone number. Rebecca is the best networker. She's really helped me a lot. And I want to give you a big round of applause. She's great at putting people in touch, and this is a fantastic day. I've been thinking that, loneliness, we talk about loneliness and isolation, but it's an issue within this community that I'm always looking for ways to deal with, because just it can be such a lonely place when nobody wants to speak to you or listen to you talk about dying. But I got in here today just to talk about, I'm now involved in a project up in the northeast of Scotland in a village called Burghead, and it's a village of 2,000 people. And we've set up a charity there, really to look at a neighbourhood model of caring for each other that could be used anywhere. The reason it happened was because it's about 2 years ago now, I was in a shop in Nairn, which is about half an hour away, and somebody said to me, I've got a friend in Burghead who's struggling to look after her own friend. Is there anything you can do to help them? So I went along, met them, and the rest is history, as they say. Because that was a retired social worker who was looking after another retired social worker who was dying. And I went on the journey with them, and really it was a journey of discovering what's missing, what's not working. And Rosemary, who was dying, said, you've got to do something about this. This is all crazy. So a lot of my own personal, what I brought to it was really an approach to dying, and approaching dying as a natural part of life. and helping Rosemary talk about it and be there for her. But what was really evident was the lack of care. So really what we are looking at is the lack of care, because without getting the physical bit right, the rest of the holistic picture just can't really happen. So the kind of thing we're looking at is, we're looking at a place. I've kind of personally just given up myself in trying to encourage people to talk about dying when they're not in that place. I think it's important to create a focus, a place in the community where the deaf people are, where people know that's where you go when it hits your home, so you come across it, and that's where people will help you. So while we do power of attorney for people, we do help people with preparations, really we're about a lifeline at the end of life. That's what our strapline is, so people can get us that day if they need us and if there's a crisis about to happen. So it's about a place. We want that to be a resource hub in the community. We also want to raise funding to create rooms there. We want to create a place where people can come to die, really as an alternative to hospital, possibly, for anyone who this home is just not suitable. Because while we all want to live at home, we all know it's not always possible. So that's going to be rooms. Our plan is that it's going to be home from home. It's going to be serviced by GPs, by the district nurses, just as people would be if they were in their own home. It can also be for people who don't have a home or a place to die. But we think that if we can get charitable funding to set it up, we can actually create something without a workforce that's going to be, as I said, serviced by the community. We will create a volunteer social support base to service it, but we think that can be sustained by the community itself. So that's what we're working towards. We're also working towards an end-of-life PA role in establishing that. In Scotland, I don't know if people know, there's self-directed support now, so people can manage their own budgets for care, and that is a fantastic opportunity, end-of-life care. People can get somebody, a one-to-one relationship with somebody that can be responsive, flexible, help the family, help the person that's dying. It can be also a disaster. Our friend Rosemary, she had a budget to manage, as an employer, her carers. She got her dog walker to care. It was great, it worked perfectly, while Rosemary was physically frail, but still very much mentally able. Her purpose in life was looking after her carer. And that worked very well until the tables turned and Rosemary needed that psychological support. It just all fell apart because the carer was not trained, and she wasn't able to provide it. So we want to get involved as a charity as well, training these carers. There's now carers out there with no support. They're working on their own for people, no training. So we want to help them as well and create a community for them in our area. We also want to improve just the personal care situation. Currently in our area, there's no capacity for overnight care, and there's not really much capacity for day care. In the future, there's going to be 35% more people needing care, and in brackets dying, and 15% less workforce. So we have to mobilise people that are not a traditional source of care. So we're currently speaking to people in the community. We're looking at getting nursing students, care students to do overnight shifts who can stay up all night without blinking, and older nurses like us, supporting them and creating a support system. So we're looking at that. We're also looking at a model of care where the local charity finds the local people that are off to Spain for 6 months of the year, but when they come back, they want to do something. The retired people who are coming to me saying, I want to serve, I want to care, I want to do something, I want to give something back. But oh, what if people think I'm prying? What if people think I can't do it? What if I can't do it? What if I overcommit myself? So we're going to link those people up. We're looking at technology to do that so that we don't get involved in the bureaucracy that's going to prevent it. Yeah, that's it. That's it. I want to. So before the whistle, I want to give a shout out to Mortuaries for Murray. I don't know where you are. The White Family Trust. They are doing work with. There they are. We're doing work nationally to look at police procedures and sudden death procedures and making that more compassionate and humane. So please support that. That's it. And if anybody's interested, get in touch with them. And if anybody's interested in the Holistic Death Network, which is I would also like. I've got energy to link people up. There might be people in this room that's looking at a holistic approach to just the last weeks of somebody's life, particularly in relation to anxiety and agitation, and looking at a different way of managing that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sharon Hudson and I'm from deepest, darkest Birmingham in England. I'm a member of a community collective called Brumyodo, which we now recognise 4 years on is a really stupid name, because unless you live in Birmingham, you don't know what Brum is, which is our colloquialism for Birmingham. And if you live in the rich multicultural city of Birmingham, many of us don't only die once. So, has been pointed out to us several times. Brumyodo is a collective. It's made up of health professionals, undertakers, food artists, actors, many different people, all with the intent of changing societal attitudes, conversations and behaviours relating to death and dying. And we do that in a way that is voluntary. We've got funding from the Arts Council and we do it on the edge of health services. And it's really interesting for me listening to Libby and the work that she does, because I'm a nurse and I work in hospice and I work in hospice community. And I, at the time, 4 years ago, had to leave hospice community to do this work because it's on the edge. It's more creative. It was harder to do from within the system. Interestingly, over the last 4 years, what's happened is some of that has bridged. So what we're finding is that some of that creative work is bridging what's happening within services, and they're joining up and their edges are getting blurred. Anyway. For the last few years, for the last couple of years, we've run a festival called the Matter of Life and Death Festival, which is a Birmingham arts-based festival relating to all things about death and dying. It's grown year on year. We get funding from the Arts Council, and there's all sorts goes on in there. We utilise arts because we think that arts create a different conversation. They open up people's minds, they behave in a different way. We have death cafes and all sorts of other things, but I wanted to just talk to you in my short time about a couple of examples of why we think things work. We did something last year called The Woodland, which is some artists called French and Mottershed, which do a podcast of you dying, the story of you dying and decomposing. And you go and walk into the woodlands and you lay down in the woodlands and you listen to what happens as your body decomposes. When you talk to people about this, they either run a mile or they're intrigued, and it's, you know, the people that have done it either desperately wanted to be cremated afterwards, but actually the majority of them saw it as a beautiful thing. And there was a mother and daughter that did this last year. And what happened for them after this was that it created a conversation with them where the mother talked to her daughter about when her own mother had died. She often thinks of what happens to her body when she's buried and the fear that's associated with that. And that created a conversation with her and with her daughter that then allowed them to talk about what that means and what that means to them. The other thing that we did lots of things, but the other thing we did was we had a panel discussion with a paediatric intensivist and an ethicist, and a lady called Leslie Goodburn, who talks very eloquently and has produced a theatre production about her experiences of her husband dying within the health service. And what this conversation turned to was children living and dying in intensive care. And it was hugely emotive, and people learned a lot from it and engaged in that conversation. And being hugely saddened at the moment of the story of young Alfie Evans and his death and dying, and how that has impacted society in their understanding of death and what that means, and the medicalisation of death. This, for us, was a huge thing. And it really helped to start to break down some of that myth and understanding that's around that, and to really, the doctor that was involved in that conversation was so beautiful and so human, and to be able to get that message across to people in that human way was amazing. We have our festival starts this year on the 10th of May, and we have a full programme of events, which I won't be able to share with you now, but if you look we utilise social media a lot. It's a brilliant tool. If you look on Twitter at Brumyodo, we have a website called brumyodo.org.uk, and we have a Facebook page called Brumyodo. So that can give you lots more information about what we're offering. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Stephanie Hutchinson and I work for Caledonia Cremation with my distinctly non-Caledonian accent. I'm actually half Scottish, but my accent is fully New Zealand, in case you are wondering. So Caledonia Cremation, we're a new not-for-profit funeral directors. We're set up under the aegis of Community Renewal, which is a anti-poverty charity. When I wrote my notes earlier, I wrote anti-charity poverty, so I had to say that very slowly. And our remit is to contribute to the eradication of funeral poverty in Scotland. So for those of you who may not be sure about what a direct cremation is, because that is what we offer, it is when there's no service at the crematorium, and indeed the only people present for the committal are Caledonia Cremation team members and staff from the crematorium. So it's not for everyone. It seems a cold concept to some. And we don't want to persuade people into having a direct cremation. We just want to make people aware that it is an option. People have called us, they're very attracted to the price because it's only £995. And if you know, the average cost of a funeral is around £3,500. So they call us, but we do work with them and talk to them and make sure that it is what they want. Because for some people, they don't realise quite how separate that disposal of the body is from any other ceremony that they might want to organise. So we work with them and support their decision because, for plenty of people, the ceremony with a coffin there, the traditional approach is very key to their grieving process. And for some people, it's just the simple thing that they can't be there for the committal that feels it's not right for them. And it really works for some people. It really, we've been really surprised actually at the uptake, as it were. And there's plenty of people who phoned us who want to register their interest in having a direct cremation. Certainly a lot of humble, older Scottish people, I notice, just go, put me in a cardboard box and, then the family can have a ceilidh, but they don't want any fuss, they don't want anything untoward, and they also, I've noticed that some of the feedback has been that they just don't want to spend a lot of money on something that they think isn't worth it. They don't want to line the pockets of the funeral directors that they don't trust, it would seem. And research shows that if given the choice, people opt for lower cost and more personalisation. And so our service also does offer the chance for people to work with us, so we help them if they need the help in planning a more personal service. And we also do offer some aftercare in the form of some of just bereavement support and also counselling if that's required. So it's an interesting time that we're in, because I think given that the capitalist and consumer world that we live in, it's no surprise that people do feel that the more money they spend on a funeral, the more dignified it might be, or the more love they can show for the person who's died. I think Ewan mentioned the status anxiety. I think there's a lot of that around funerals, and we really want to work with people to tackle that idea and just raise awareness around the option of a direct cremation. David Bowie had a direct cremation. It wasn't for lack of money. It was a philosophical choice. And plenty of people who have used us have done so because they've been respecting their aunts, their father's wishes for a very simple departure from this earth. And it's not, it's not everyone's choice, but it seems to be increasing in popularity, I think. I've been waiting for that, But there was something else I want to say. Yes, that's right. Yeah, I think so far 75% of our customers have been out of a philosophical choice. Certainly, for some people, money has been an issue, and but they have really appreciated that it's not what some people call the pauper's funeral. We offer them dignity, we offer them care, and they have really appreciated it. And I think it's something that, we really want to take out into the more deprived communities, the idea that it can be a philosophical choice, not just out of economic necessity. Because I really want to work with people to avoid the shame that they might feel about having to choose something like a direct cremation. And the more it can be sort of accepted generally by the wider world, wider society, the more acceptable it can be for the people who need to make that choice rather than want to. Right, I think that's it for me. I'm over in the corner. You can ask me more questions if you like later in the day. Thank you.
Right, my name is Sharon Foley. I'm the CEO of the Irish Hospice Foundation, and I'm very, very conscious I am what is separating you from your lunch. So I'm going to take just a couple of minutes to tell you the story of the making of the People's Charter on Dying, Death and Bereavement in Ireland. And it started with the concept. In 2016, Ireland was celebrating 100 years since what was the bloody 1916 Rising, which started us on the road to independence. And we had an idea. Let's go back and ask the Irish people what they think of dying, death and bereavement in Ireland in 2016. And we were informed by Alan and all of his colleagues in terms of public health approaches, what were we going to be doing around public engagement. And we wanted this to be a very engaged campaign with the Irish public. And we used the skills and the resources of compassionate communities. And Rebecca, who's here with us today, was a huge driver, as was Cathy McLaughlin. And we started the project with one-to-one interviews on the street with cameras and with photographs and asking people for their experience of dying, death and bereavement in Ireland. And we got some very, very rich and beautiful stories. And the wealth of those knowledges and the images and the quotes were used as the basis for a very, very extensive social media and in-print campaign all across Ireland, where we were looking for the views of ordinary people, the ordinary people of Ireland. And we used the expression, have your say. The expression was, have your say, your life, your death, your say. And to be honest, when it was going out, I was thinking, we'll get 400 to 500 responses from the social media campaign. We developed a survey, SurveyMonkey tool, asking about 5 questions, and we sent that out to all of our NGO partners. 400 to 500 would have been pretty good, I think. Just under 3,000 people engaged with the campaign over a 14-week period. The response was phenomenal. It was absolutely amazing. And people just didn't engage with the first question. They answered the first question, and they answered with great depth right down to the 5th question. So we now have this huge bank of data. And we did the first very extensive analysis of the data, and we created the People's Charter. And there's a poster on it over there, and there's a copy of it down here, but this is what it looks like. And the idea of looking from the thematic analysis was to really stay true to the words that people used, not to turn it into something that becomes corporate speak or something that has 16 pages and is quite complicated. We wanted it to be something that people could engage with. So the People's Charter on Dying, Death and Bereavement was launched at our biennial forum in 2017, and this is a forum we have on dying, death and bereavement. And it's been very, very widely accepted, and people are looking at it with curiosity, but I would think, a bit like compassionate communities, we're on the start of the journey. So what we're doing with the charters, we're using a very big social media campaign to push out the charter, and every week Rebecca takes her time to write a blog on different parts of the charter, and that's just to start the process off. What we're doing now is we're analysing all of our work against the charter. What are we in the Irish Hospice Foundation doing to realise each line of the charter? But equally, what do we want other people to do? What are we asking our state partners to do? What are we asking our health services to do? What are we looking for our partners in specialist palliative care to do? What are we asking our hospice to do? What are we asking our communities, our local authorities to do? And that's going to start the whole ball of work that's going to come from the Irish Hospice Foundation, building on a lot of our programmes that we've been doing in the last few years, our extensive programme work in bereavement, our Think Ahead programme. All of those works have been brought into a new public engagement programme for the Irish Hospice Foundation. It's going down very well. We're getting a lot of positive reaction from the Charter, and we are looking to work in partnership with all of those who have an interest in dying, death and bereavement Ireland to make the aspirations of the Charter a reality for the people of Ireland. We've got copies of the Charter, my contact details and card are over there. If anybody wants to comment, wants to feedback to us, wants to tell us their thoughts or views, we're happy to receive these. We see the Charter very much as a living document that's going on to spur lots of other things in the community. And that's all I wanted to say. Enjoy your lunch.